nationalist republics within why Vladimir Putin does not abolish them and why they have never dared to leave. Part 1. The illusion of a unified Russia. When looking at the world map, we often see Russia as a gigantic, continuous landmass stretching from the cold Baltic Sea all the way to the distant Pacific Ocean. On political maps, it is usually colored in a single shade, red or blue, creating the impression of a unified, homogeneous country, almost without cracks. In the popular imagination, Russians are blonde, blue-eyed people who drink vodka, love Slavic folk music, and dance the kalinka. But that is only the outer shell of a far more complex entity. What we call the Russian Federation is in reality not a nation-state in the conventional European sense. It is not built upon a single ethnicity, a single language, or a single identity. Russia is a massive mosaic, assembled from hundreds of ethnic, religious, and historical fragments, pieces that have fought each other, been conquered, rebelled, and eventually subdued. Within Russia's current borders exist 22 autonomous republics. Each has its own constitution, a local parliament, an official language alongside Russian, distinct cultural symbols, and national identity. In the past, some even had their own presidents. In the North Caucasus, there are Muslim republics where Sharia law in practice carries more weight than civil law. In Siberia, there are regions practicing Vajrayana Buddhism amid the harshest climate on Earth. Some republics are so wealthy that, if independent, their GDP per capita could surpass that of many European countries thanks to diamonds, oil, and gas. Yet others suffer from chronic poverty, violence, unemployment, and decades-long radicalization. And it is precisely here that a great paradox emerges. Part 2. The Putin Paradox. A nationalist who does not destroy the Federation. Vladimir Putin is not a reformer in the liberal sense, nor is he someone who believes in diversity for its own sake. Putin is a quintessential product of the centralized Russian state, where power flows from top to bottom, where order matters more than freedom, and where territorial unity is considered a matter of national survival. In his worldview, Russia must never be weak, must never fragment, and must never repeat the tragedy of 1991, a moment he once called the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. For that reason, at first glance, Putin appears to be someone who could never tolerate a multi-ethnic federal structure in which 22 republics exist as states within a state. Each has its own constitution, its own official language, its own national identity, sometimes stronger than Russian identity. So the question arises, why would someone obsessed with unity accept the existence of 22 political entities inside his own country? Why does he not do the theoretically simplest thing? Abolish the republic status, turn Russia into a truly unitary, homogeneous, easily controlled state? The question becomes even more puzzling when we look at reality. First question, why does Putin subsidize regions that constantly threaten secession? Chechnya, Dagestan, Ingushetia, these are not peaceful regions. They are places that have launched armed uprisings, carried out terrorist bombings, directly challenged Moscow's authority. 2 Chechen wars claimed tens of thousands of lives and exposed the weakness of post-Soviet Russia. Yet after all that, Putin did not eliminate Chechnya. On the contrary, he poured billions of dollars in federal funds into the region. Why? Because Putin understands one simple truth. A North Caucasus ruled purely by repression will explode. A North Caucasus that is bought off will remain quiet. Subsidies, social autonomy, and Moscow's deliberate blindness toward local exceptions are not signs of weakness. They are security costs. For the Kremlin, paying is far cheaper than fighting a full-scale war. Second question, why don't the richest regions dare to become independent? If Chechnya is a burden, then Sakha, Yakutia, is a treasure. 99% of Russia's diamonds, massive reserves of gold, coal, and rare earths, a territory larger than many European countries combined. In theory, Yakutia has everything needed to become a wealthy, independent state. But in reality, Yakutia has never come close to secession. Why? Because independence from Moscow does not mean freedom. It means losing export access, losing pipelines, railways, and logistics, losing military protection, becoming a power vacuum between major powers. Putin does not need tanks in Yakutia. He only needs control over the single pathway through which its resources reach the world. Independence in this case is not liberation, it is economic self-strangulation. Third question, why does Putin not abolish the Federation once and for all? This is the core question. The answer lies in a truth Putin understands better than anyone in the Kremlin. The Russian Federation is not a state created by consensus, but an empire preserved through a fragile balance. Abolishing the republics would not strengthen Russia. It would trigger chain reactions of resistance, destroy informal agreements, force the center to rule through permanent violence. Putin does not want a Russia that must deploy its army against itself every day. Instead, he chose a more dangerous, yet more durable path. Preserve the federal form, but hollow out its power. Keep the old map, but change how it works internally. The final and most terrifying question. If this model is so effective, why does it still worry Putin? Because he himself knows this federation is not bound together by trust, but by interests, money, and fear. And those are not permanent adhesives. So the real question is not, can Putin control the republics, but rather, how long can he maintain this balance? To understand why this question haunts Putin so deeply, we must return to the origin of the first crack, the legacy left by Lenin and the nightmare called 1991. Part 3. Lenin's legacy and the shock of 1991. The Soviet Union did not collapse because of a battle. It disintegrated from within. The USSR was composed of 15 Soviet socialist republics whose borders were drawn along ethnic lines, following Lenin's logic. Every nation must have the right to self-determination, including the right to secede. It was a revolutionary ideal, but also a time bomb. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, those 15 republics left, taking with them more than one-third of the population, most of the fertile agricultural belt, many key industrial centers. But the nightmare did not end there. Inside post-Soviet Russia still existed dozens of autonomous republics, granted nominal authority but never truly controlled. Boris Yeltsin, Russia's first president, in a moment of democratic euphoria and weakened central power, uttered a disastrous phrase: "Take as much sovereignty as you can swallow." The gates of hell opened. Tatarstan printed its own passports and defied Moscow. Chechnya declared independence and took up arms, igniting two bloody wars. Yakutia demanded control over its diamonds. Other regions quietly accumulated power. Russia in the 1990s was like a cracked pane of glass, one more touch away from shattering. Part 4. Putin enters, not to reform, but to save. When Vladimir Putin entered the Kremlin on New Year's Eve 1999, he did not inherit a superpower. He inherited a weakened state, a dilapidated army, a disintegrating federation, and rebellious mini-kingdoms within it. Putin understood clearly, abolishing the republics equals full-scale civil war. Letting them go equals the collapse of Russia. There was only one path left, not destruction, but domestication. He called it the vertical of power. Part 5, the real weapon, resources and pipelines. Putin realized a vital truth. Most of Russia's resources do not lie in ethnic Russian regions. Sakha, Yakutia, 99% of Russia's diamonds, Tatarstan and Bashkortostan, oil and chemicals, Yamalo-Nenets, the world's largest gas reserves. If these regions became independent, Russia would instantly lose its status as an energy superpower. Putin's solution was not tanks, it was pipelines. He nationalized energy corporations, placed Gazprom and Rosneft under Kremlin control, monopolized export systems. The result, local regions have resources but no exit routes. The center can simply turn the valve and suffocate their economies. Independence becomes economic suicide. Hack Part 6, blood tax, subsidies, and a cold bargain. The relationship between Moscow and the republics resembles patronage, not administration. Rich regions fund the budget, poor regions receive subsidies. The North Caucasus survives on 70 to 80% federal funding. In return, local elites maintain order at any cost, suppress separatism and extremism, send their sons into the army. In the Ukraine war, the highest casualty rates come from the poorest republics. This is not merely coercion, it is a survival pact. Part 7, identity. The most dangerous weak point. The greatest challenge is not economic, it is identity. Russia promotes mandatory Russian language, removal of the title president at the republic level, reduction of sovereignty symbols, but resistance persists. Tatarstan quietly protects its language. Chechnya trades loyalty for deep autonomy. The North Caucasus is exceptionalized. These are delayed action political minds. Part 8, why has Russia not collapsed? The West views Russia as a failed nation-state. Putin views it as a civilizational state. Republic elites study in Moscow, do business with Russian corporations, have children living in St. Petersburg. They have no future outside Russia. Instead of seceding, they compete in loyalty. Chechnya sends troops, Tatarstan produces drones, Buryatia supplies tank crews. Putin has turned diversity into a composite strength. Part 9, the final gamble. But the system rests on two pillars: resource revenue, Putin's personal authority. If either weakens, the old Soviet-era cracks may reopen. Conclusion: Putin does not keep the 22 republics out of territorial greed. He keeps them because, without them, Russia would no longer be Russia. No strategic depth, no resources, no great power status. The final question of the 21st century remains: will this multi-ethnic structure continue to hold, or will the Russian bear one day tear itself apart from within?